The hall was alive with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses when Amaka suddenly stood up, grabbed the microphone, and tapped it twice. "Everyone, please, I need your attention." Her voice cut clean through the noise. The DJ lowered the volume. Conversations died mid-sentence. Dozens of eyes turned toward her, smiling at first, until they noticed something unusual. Amaka was smiling too, but her eyes were cold. Tunde, her husband, looked up from his seat at the front table, a confused yet amused expression on his face. "Ah, my wife wants to give a speech," he said, raising his glass. "Let's hear her." A few people clapped. Amaka's grip tightened around the microphone. "Before we cut the cake tonight," she said slowly, "there's someone very important I would like you all to meet." There was a pause. Tunde's smile faded just a little. "What's this one again?" he muttered under his breath. Amaka turned toward the entrance of the hall. "Please, come in." The doors opened, and the moment the woman stepped inside, everything changed. Gasps filled the room like a wave. Tunde froze. His glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. What is she doing here?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Amaka didn't look at him. She was watching the woman walk forward. 3 days earlier, Amaka had been sitting alone in her bedroom, staring at her husband's phone with trembling hands. The message was still open. "I miss you, my husband. I can't wait to see you again." Her heart pounded so loudly it felt like it would burst out of her chest. Husband. Her husband. Her fingers shook as she scrolled up. Photos, messages, voice notes, and then the one thing that shattered everything completely, a picture of Tunde in traditional attire, standing beside another woman, a wedding photo. Amaka dropped the phone as it burned her. "No, no, no," she whispered, shaking her head. Her breathing became uneven. Tears filled her eyes instantly, but she refused to let them fall. "This must be a mistake," she said aloud, as if saying it would make it true. But deep down, she already knew. Tunde had married another woman, not years ago, not before her. Days ago, silently, secretly, like she didn't exist, like their 10 years together meant nothing. She sat there for what felt like hours, staring into nothingness. Her mind replayed every moment, every late night, every excuse. "I have a meeting. I'm traveling for work. My phone battery died." Lies, all lies. A tear finally slipped down her cheek, then another. But suddenly, she stopped crying. Her face changed. The pain didn't disappear. It hardened. "Okay," she whispered, wiping her tears slowly. "Okay." That night, when Tunde came home, Amaka was in the kitchen, cooking, like nothing had happened. Tunde walked in, loosened his tie, and dropped his bag. "Ah, Amaka, I'm tired." He said casually. "Work today was stressful." Amaka turned and smiled. "Welcome, my husband." He paused slightly, surprised by her calm tone. "You're smiling like this? Did something happen?" She shook her head gently. "Nothing. I just missed you." Tunde relaxed immediately. "See my sweet wife," he said, walking over and hugging her from behind. "You don't know how lucky I am to have you." Amaka closed her eyes briefly. If only he knew. "You're right," she said quietly. "You are very lucky." At dinner, she laughed at his jokes. She asked about his day. She even served him his favorite meal. Tunde noticed the difference, but didn't question it too much. In fact, he enjoyed it. Maybe she has finally adjusted, he thought. But what he didn't know was that every smile Amaka gave him was carefully controlled. Every word she spoke was measured. Every move she made was part of something bigger. The next morning, after Tunde left for work, Amaka picked up her phone and made a call. "Hello?" she said calmly. "Good afternoon. I need to speak with a lawyer." There was a pause. "Yes," she continued. It's urgent. Over the next 2 days, Amaka moved like a woman on a mission. She met with the lawyer. She gathered documents. She checked accounts. And what she discovered only fueled her resolve even more. Tunda had been planning this. Money had been moved. Properties had been listed under different names. He didn't just betray her emotionally. He also betrayed her physically. He had been preparing to erase her. Noted, she said quietly during one of her meetings. Everything will be handled. But that wasn't all. Late that evening, Amaka sat on her bed, staring at a number she had saved but hadn't called yet. The other woman. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She hesitated. Then I pressed it. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, "Hello?" a soft voice answered. Amaka's chest tightened slightly, but her voice remained steady. "Good evening," she said. "My name is Amaka. I believe we need to talk about our husband." There was silence, heavy, suffocating silence. I don't understand," the woman replied nervously. Amaka let out a small breath. "You will," she said. "Trust me, you will." By the time she ended the call, everything had been set in motion, and now, standing in that hall, watching the woman walk closer, Amaka felt no fear, only control. The woman stopped a few steps away, looking uncomfortable as all eyes turned to her. Tunde stood up abruptly. "Amaka, what is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his voice shaking. Amaka finally turned to him. For the first time that night, their eyes met. And what Tunde saw in her gaze made his stomach drop. Calm, cold, unshaken. "You asked what this is?" she said softly into the microphone. She took a step closer to him. "This," she continued, her voice echoing through the silent hall, "is the truth you thought you could hide." The room held its breath, and Tunde knew, at that moment, everything was about to fall apart. Tunde's lips parted, but no words came out. The silence in the hall was no longer just quiet. It was heavy, pressing down on everyone present. Even the air felt different. "Amaka," he finally said, forcing a weak laugh. "You're joking, right? What kind of drama is this?" Amaka tilted her head slightly, studying him as if she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. "Drama?" she repeated calmly. "You think this is a drama?" She turned slightly and gestured toward the woman standing a few steps away. "Maybe she should explain," Amaka added. All eyes shifted again. The woman looked terrified now, her fingers clutching her handbag tightly. "Tunda," she said softly, her voice trembling. You said you handled everything." A ripple of murmurs spread across the hall. Tunde's face lost what little color it had left. "Handled what?" someone whispered loudly from the crowd. Amaka let the silence stretch just long enough to make everyone uncomfortable before speaking again. "For those of you who don't understand what's going on," she said, her tone steady and clear, "let me make it simple." She paused. "Tunde married another woman." Gasps erupted immediately. "No!" "Jesus! This is unbelievable." Voices overlapped, shock spreading like wildfire. "And not years ago," Amaka continued, raising her voice slightly above the noise. "Not before me. Not even during a separation." She looked directly at Tunde. 3 days ago. The hall exploded into chaos. Tunde ran his hand over his head, pacing slightly. "Amaka, stop this nonsense," he snapped, his voice rising in panic. "You don't know what you're saying." Amaka's expression didn't change. "Then say it," she replied. "Say, I'm lying." Tunde froze. His silence was louder than any confession. The murmuring intensified. "Answer her," someone shouted. "Tunde, is it true?" another voice called out. The second woman began to cry softly. "You told me she knew," she said, her voice breaking. You told me everything was settled. Amaka's eyes flickered briefly toward her, and for a split second, there was something there, something human. But it disappeared just as quickly. Tunde, Amaka said, stepping closer to him, lowering her voice just enough to make it more intense. You didn't just betray me. She leaned in slightly. You lied to her too. Tunde swallowed hard. Amaka, listen, he started. No, she cut him off sharply. You've spoken enough. She turned back to the crowd. For 10 years, she said, her voice softer now but carrying clearly. I stood by this man. I supported him. I believed in him. I built a life with him. Her eyes scanned the room for friends, family, colleagues. And while I was doing that, he was building another life behind my back. A woman in the crowd covered her mouth, shaking her head. This is too much. Tunde suddenly stepped forward, desperation written all over his face. Amaka, please, he said, lowering his voice. Let's talk about this privately. You don't need to do this here. Amaka smiled faintly. Privately? She echoed. She looked around the hall. You mean like how you privately married another woman? A few people in the crowd couldn't help but react. Exactly. He's wicked. Tunde clenched his fists. You're embarrassing me, he said through gritted teeth. Amaka let out a short, almost amused laugh. Embarrassing you, she repeated. She took a step back, giving him space, as if inviting him to fully feel the moment. No, Tunde, she said quietly. You embarrassed yourself. There was a pause. Then she reached into her bag. Tunde's eyes followed the movement.